Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. With the aim of improving water quality, University of Vermont Extension is engaged in a number of research and technical assistance programs on farms. The efforts involve education and technology, and occasionally some specialized equipment. Keith Silva introduces us to new technology and equipment that keeps nutrients in the soil and out of our waterways.
You're looking at the future of nutrient management and improved water quality in Vermont.
You know, if I was a layperson and I wasn't a farmer and I saw it, other than the hose, I might think they were planting something in the field.
This is the Grassland Shallow Slot Manure Injection Tool, and in the next few years, it's likely to become the way to spread manure.
If you get some decent regrowth, you can still get out there and put on manure without worrying about ruining the crop.
At this dairy farm in Bridport, farmers, state officials, and equipment dealers have gathered to watch a demonstration of this new technology. Kirsten Workman is a UVM Extension agronomist.
It's injecting liquid dairy manure literally just 2 inches under the surface of the grass plants. So this does very little disturbance, almost no true disturbance of the soil or the plants. It's just making a slot and then dropping the manure right in that slot.
The injector is hooked to a drag line that pumps manure from a nearby pit. 60 cutting blades make a narrow slot in the ground, and the manure is injected under the surface. From below or above, it doesn't look or smell like manure is being spread on this field at all. And that's the point.
How long have you been using the injection?
This was the first time.
What do you think so far?
Looks good so far.
The host of this event is Dan Barnes. He and his family operate the Black and White Base Ranch. He believes this technology has significant potential for protecting natural resources.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that field, you can't see a lot of manure there, which is what we want. We want it down, covered up, and down where the roots are.
Yeah.
The plants can use it. Potentially, we're capturing more of the nitrogen. It's not just kind of flying away in the air as we're applying it, or before it gets soaked into the soil and attached to a soil molecule or a plant root. That's the big driver for me.
Typically, when manure is applied to a hayfield, it's spread on top of the soil. When it rains, some of the nutrients in the manure, like phosphorus and nitrogen, can wash off and end up in waterways. The decision to use the injector came out of the research Workman and her colleagues did on phosphorus runoff from hayfields.
We realized that this dissolved phosphorus running off the surfaces of hayfields in the summer was a higher risk than we really thought it was. Because hayfields are low erosion, we think of them as being lower risk than an annual crop field. But that's not necessarily always the case. And in Vermont, we have more acres of hay than we have in annual crops by a lot. And so that can be a potentially very large, risky situation. And so we recognized that, identified that, and we started looking into what could be the best technology.
This is one of the largest manure injectors on the market and costs around $100,000. UVM Extension received a grant from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets to buy it and to subsidize the cost of its operation for 2 years. Extension contracted with Matthews Trucking, a state-certified manure applicator, to run the injector. Farmers pay $26 per acre to use it on their farm.
A practice like this, I think what we see is over the course of about 3 years, we start to see really rapid adoption. If it works, and once they get all the kinks worked out, we start to see pretty quick adoption for practices that are working really well like this. Like all the things that we try and do in Extension, we're trying to vet that out for the farm before they go ahead and make that purchase on their own.
Many of the farmers in attendance haven't seen this technology used in Vermont. This demonstration has helped Alan Bryson make up his mind. He runs a 1,000-cow dairy in nearby Ferrisburg.
I think it's very likely that I'll have one or something very similar for next season.
Bryson figured he'd need a smaller injector that would cost about $85,000. At a time when the price being paid to farmers for their milk is the lowest it's been in a decade, any decision to buy anything has to be worth it.
It is a tough year to be a dairy farmer. It's the toughest year for me, I would say, in the last 5 years. Cash flow is tight. any expenditures that I'm looking at right now have to cash flow. They have to pay for themselves or make money, or else we can't afford to look at them. And I believe that this is one of those that will be a moneymaker. Yes. Yes.
Making sure their farm stays profitable is a farmer's primary concern. But it's not the only thing they have to consider when making decisions. Issues that occur outside the farm gate are also a farmer's business.
Well, let's be realistic. There are a lot of factors in every decision we make, and neighbors, unhappy neighbors can be a real headache at the wrong time. And you know, if we can do a little thing like this and keep our fences happy, then we're good. Be a good neighbor.
When you do something, say that's polluting the water, you're using up a resource that can't be easily replenished. So if you can find a way to get your work done the way you need it to get done and not pollute the water, isn't that so much better? And then if you can look at it and you can say, hey, I can save some fertilizer because I'm injecting this manure in the ground. I'm not losing my nitrogen off into the air. There's another plus. You're saving money there. And then from another standpoint, the good neighbor standpoint, if you can cut down on the smell of that manure, we've got neighbors that live all around us. And I mean, I don't take pleasure in stinking up the neighborhood. I mean, if we can, it just looks like a win-win all around.
As this technology spreads across Vermont, it's sure to help farmers better their bottom line and improve Vermont's natural resources. In Bridport, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Extension recently hosted its second round of on-farm demonstrations with the manure grassland injector. As the weather gets colder, you probably find yourself reaching for a sweatshirt or a sweater, but now a Vermont company is working with a homegrown filler to counter the colder weather. It's made from a fiber that many of us find in our backyards or blowing in the breeze. Rebecca Gollin has our story.
This is milkweed. It's a wildflower that's found in Vermont and around the Northeast. It's long been a nuisance for farmers, growing readily on roadsides and in backyards. But it's a favorite of pollinators, especially monarch butterflies, who lay their eggs and feed on the plant. Along with the environmental benefits, milkweed produces a fiber that's lightweight, water repellent, and, most important for Vermonters, it's warm.
It's great. It's very lightweight, which I really like, and it's very warm and it blocks the wind. That's partly from the cover fabric.
What is so incredible about this particular fiber, it can be used for all sorts of different purposes. It can be stuffing inside a jacket. It can be used for flotations and life jackets.
Kimberly Hagan and Susie Hodgson work at the University of Vermont's Center for Sustainable Agriculture. They're spearheading a project that looks at the costs and benefits of growing milkweed as a crop here in Vermont. That project led them to Charlotte Sullivan.
We've done a lot of research and development. We've made a lot of different jacket prototypes. We've worked a lot with raw milkweed floss, which is the little parachutes that attach themselves to the seeds.
Sullivan is an artist and founder of the clothing company May West. She and her partner are experimenting with using milkweed in their jackets.
It's not a new idea, but certainly our application of it is.
Sullivan has spent time working in agriculture, and that experience informs what she's hoping to create.
As someone who always works outside, I don't like feeling like what I'm having to wear in cold weather is cumbersome, is hard to move in. I don't like having to have a lot of layers. The thought of being able to wear something that's not synthetic, that's thin and malleable and flexible, while being warm and also naturally water resistant, just seemed too good to be true.
Through the partnership with UVM, Sullivan was able to get raw milkweed fiber to experiment with. After some testing, the company is pretty close to a design that can be produced on a larger scale.
Most recently, we've also been able to start prototyping jackets using milkweed in a batting form. So what that means is it's a material that you can actually cut. It's in a roll and you can cut it out and then sort of insert it into a pattern. We've been able to make different jackets and sort of test them out and feel them and experiment with different materials. Those two were before the batting, and then Kimberly and I are wearing jackets that actually have batting quilted to the inside, on mine on the inside layer and on Kimberly's on the outside. And then these
For Hodgson and Hagen, it's still the early days in terms of figuring out the best practices for growing milkweed as a crop and other resources for farmers. Answers won't come immediately, as it takes at least 3 years to establish the plant as a crop. But these researchers think there's promise.
2/3 of the American public think using renewables is important. Most people think of renewables or think of energy, and now people are starting to think of, actually, what about everything else we use in our house? Not just the food we buy, but let's think about the clothes that we buy and wear. Are they made in a sustainable way?
In the long run, this will be great for Vermont farmers because we have a product that grows here already, you know, and happily so, and that we can use it.
It's a new way for farmers to diversify while giving some important pollinators the habitat they need. And while the economic results are not finalized, so far, milkweed is proving to be beneficial all around.
When I learned that there was that connectivity with milkweed and monarchs, and how, of course, with my farming background, knowing that without pollinators, it's, you know, it doesn't matter how much you know about growing food, you don't have anything. It was just so clear that we really had to keep working with this material and develop a way for it to be used in the market. So this is really new.
Yep.
Bringing new products to life with a sustainable fiber that could give some new options to Vermont's farmers. In Middlebury, I'm Rebecca Gullen with Across the Fence.
Thank you, Rebecca. And once again, thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.